people who... I see too much violent crime being committed by young punks who think that they can get together in gangs and crews and beat the hell out of you or anyone else. They don't care where they are. They can be in DuPont Circle, but they know that we can't touch them. Why? Because the laws are weak. I can't touch you if you're 14, 15, 16, 17 years old and you have a gun. I convict someone of shooting another person with an illegal gun on a public bus in the chest. Intent to kill? I convict him. And you know what the judge gives him? Probation. Says you should go to college. We need to go after the DC Council and their absurd laws. We need to get rid of this concept of, no cash bail. We need to recognize that the people who matter are the law-abiding citizens. And it starts today. But it's not going to end today, because the president is going to do everything we need to do to make sure that these emboldened criminals understand we see you, we're watching you, and we're going to change the law to catch you.
Want to really see something that said, take a look at what happened.
Why this beat so crazy?
We will make America proud again. And you try to kill we will make America wealthy again. And yes, together, we will make America great again.
Ooh-wee. Drop the hammer. Slam that gavel. Let's do it. Let's do it, Judge. Let's do it right now. The fuck around and find out movement. Around and find out is here. We actually have a president. A night and day difference from the previous administration. Happy Monday, everybody. Hope y'all ready. It's going down right now. It is. And Judge Jeanine, she nails it on what's wrong with DC and what's wrong with this system. It's going down. We not effing around. Happy Monday, everybody. God bless them beautiful patriots around the world. Let's go and jump in.
We all want the same thing. We all want a safe city. We want a safe capital. We want to be able to bring our families here. We want to be able to come and enjoy the history that makes this place great. And unfortunately, we are not in that position right now. And Mr. President, I want to thank you for taking the step that we need right now to make criminals understand that they are not going to get away with it anymore. And I'm not going to stand here and go over and over the cases. But what I can tell you is this. I see too much violent crime being committed by young punks who think that they can get together in gangs and crews and beat the hell out of you or anyone else. They don't care where they are. They can be in DuPont Circle, but they know that we can't touch them. Why? Because the laws are weak. I can't touch you if you're 14, 15, 16, 17 years old and you have a gun. I convict someone of shooting another person with an illegal gun on a public bus in the chest. Intent to kill? I convict him. And you know what the judge gives him?
Probation.
Probation.
Oh,
says you should go to college. We need to go after the DC Council and their absurd laws.
And we need to walk that judge out. We need to walk all these judges out. All these woke activists, DEI, didn't earn it, not qualified activists, they not judges. Walk them judges out too. We need to make an example out of these judges.
We need to get rid of this concept of, no cash bail. We need to recognize that the people who matter are the law-abiding citizens.
Amen.
And it starts today. But it's not going to end today, because the president is going to do everything we need to do to make sure that these emboldened criminals understand we see you, we're watching you, and we're going to change the law to catch you. And my final note is this. These kids understand that the jurisdiction is through the state attorney general, Brian Schwab. I did a poster of the young man from Doge who was beaten bloody with a severe concussion, a broken nose. And
Big
then
balls.
I did a poster of what happens to those kids, because I can't arrest them, I can't prosecute them. They go to family court and they get to do yoga and arts and crafts. Enough. It changes today.
Y'all see how Trump kind of like giggled? It's true. She is dead serious. I'm telling y'all, man. We had got in trouble in school when I was. Well, what was I? I think I was 13. Was I 13 or 14? But the mom didn't want to press charges. We had like some little fake clique. They called it back when we was in middle school. It was like a clique. It was like gang and clique meant the same thing. And I wasn't a fully there, but I seen it take place. And they had beat up some kid, and the lady mom wanted to press charges, and we had to go to this juvenile thing. And we were literally in there doing arts and crafts. I'm so serious. She's not lying. These programs actually exist. Yes, I used to be I'm telling you, I got in trouble 3 times that was really bad. And my parents whooped my butt, man. And I learned immediately, you know, right from wrong. My parents say we not raising thugs in this household. I'm telling you, when I used to get in trouble, man, my dad, they used to be waiting on our butt to get home. He say, Junior, pull your pants down. Come on in here, Junior. And if you scream, I'm going to give you another one. Wow. Rest in peace to Daddy. Rest in peace to Rick Sr. He was a great father. Great man. Yeah, we learned quick. We got hit upside the head. You better not be talking back. You say what? You about to go in there and wash them dishes. We just cooked your butt some food. You better not talk back. You about to go to school and get good grades. You better not act a fool. You better not talk back to your teacher. Good times, man. Good times. You about to have some respect around this house. We pay the bills in this house. Oh yeah, talk back if you want to. Wham! Right upside the head. The first thing they seen. It could be an extension cord, a pan, a stick. Yeah. Y'all don't abuse your kids. I'm just saying how I grew up. Y'all know how I grew up. I'm always transparent. But shout out to all our parents out there. Keep being amazing parents, amazing leaders and mentors. Right from wrong and common sense. Because the route that we headed with this new generation and this technology and the social medias and all this stuff, it's only getting worse. I'm just being honest. You know, and some people really don't understand that they raising punks and thugs. Simple. People are raising punks and thugs and don't even know it. And then sometimes it's not even on the parents' fault. Because the kids still go down the wrong path, the wrong direction. And then when it's time to learn, it's too late. Sometimes you don't get that second chance. It's over with. You know, so y'all keep being amazing parents and leaders. You know, but Judge Jeanine dropping the hammer this morning. This is good. This is good. Let's go and roll into that next clip.
So we watched it together. President Trump wrapping up a lengthy news conference, declaring today Liberation Day in our nation's capital. And he promises to aggressively crack down on crime and clean up what he calls our once beautiful capital. The White House says these efforts are in line with an executive order the president signed in March to make D.C. safer. This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner, here with my co-host Emily Compagno. Also joining us today, Carly Shimkus, co-host of Fox and Friends First, Lisa Booth, Fox News political analyst, and former justice.
This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. Today we're declaring public safety emergency in the District of Columbia, and Attorney General Pam Bondi, who's fantastic, is taking command of the Metropolitan Police Department. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety in Washington, D.C., and they're going to be allowed to do their job properly. You want to have safety in the streets. You want to be able to leave your apartment or your house where you live and feel safe and go into a store to buy a newspaper or buy something. And you don't have that now.
Look, the president really leaned hard on the big picture, because it's not just about Washington, D.C. It's about soft on crime policies across America. For example, he's going after no cash bail laws, and he's really hammering down on liberal prosecutors in Democratic-led cities like New York and Chicago.
We have other cities also that are bad, very bad. You look at Chicago, how bad it is. You look at Los Angeles, how bad it is.
And they ought to walk them Democrats out in handcuffs. The hell with them Democrats. Incompetent leadership. People got approval ratings of 3 and 5 and 6 damn percent. People ought to be walked out. They shouldn't even be able to resign. They ought to just walk them out in handcuffs.
The cities that are very bad, New York has a problem. And then you have, of course, Baltimore and Oakland. We don't even mention that anymore. They're so far gone. We're not going to let it happen. We're not going to lose our cities over this. And this will go further. We're starting very strongly with D.C., and we're going to clean it up real quick, very quickly, as they say.
John Yoo, that sounded like a shot across the bow. We are not going to lose our cities over this. This is more than just a shout out to the criminals. This is those blue-led cities and the way that they're doing business legally.
It's a good point, Harris. Look, the president can't do a lot about crime in the inner cities in places like Oakland, where I work, or San Francisco, where I'm from, or Philadelphia, where I grew up. These are places where crime has gone out of control. But the one place that the president can put law and order into effect is Washington, D.C. Our founders made the District of Columbia a federal city. They didn't want it under the control of Virginia or Maryland or any other state. It is uniquely the duty and responsibility of the president to enforce the laws, and those laws include the criminal laws for public safety in Washington, D.C. Now, he doesn't just need to nationalize the D.C. police and declare an emergency, which can go on for 30 days. He can send in federal law enforcement, which he's done. He can send in the National Guard. There's no governor to fight with like the governor.
And then that's when we hear all the, don't worry, it'll come in the next fake news clip, and Democrats will run on to the fake news. They're going to say Trump is unconstitutional. You're going to hear all the fear mongering, the lies, the misinformation. You know, we've already been hearing Trump is deporting American citizens these last entire month and a half. You know, all the fear mongering, the lies. It's just lie after lie. They won't tell you the truth. You know, everything is unconstitutional, unpresidential, threat to democracy. You know, the country will tank and be destroyed. Everything will burn and crash. Look how that turned out. What happened to World War III? I tell you, man.
California to send the National Guard in. They're not limited to being there for 30 days. It's going to take time, but I think the president can use D.C. to produce good policies and demonstrate to the rest of the country how to turn around their crime-ridden inner cities.
So real quickly, so what we heard the president do today is he put the D.C. police under the AG Pam Bondi's control after announcing that the people from the feds will be in charge. That's what you're talking about.
Yes. Under the Home Rule Act of 1973, the president can take over the D.C. police. But that doesn't apply to the other law enforcement assets Paul was just talking about in your last show, the DEA, the FBI, and then, of course, the National Guard. Now, look, if you had to ask me, I think this whole Home Rule thing has been a mistake and a constitutional error, because I don't think it was a good idea for the federal government to ever give D.C. self-government. That was not what the founders intended. They wanted the federal government to always remain in control of the District of Columbia. So we're seeing 50 years now of misrule, misgovernment. The murder rate in D.C. has historically always been higher than in other cities in the country. That's
fascinating, Emily, because we're actually technically watching the rates of crime fall across the country. But in certain areas, it's the pure violence of the crime that's popping right now as an outbreak, coupled with people living on the streets and encampments in many of those blue-led cities.
Right, and if D.C. was a state, it would be the highest homicide rate per capita 4 years running. It's been, frankly, an abominable destruction of what could have been a very peaceful and, I think, example of how government should run. I think what I love about this, and I say it with a caveat that this is the first step, there was an excellent articulation today of exactly why this perfect storm has been created. And we saw firsthand as a White House press corps member talked about how he had been robbed at gunpoint by a child and nothing happened. The trauma and the stress are real, and there are lives we cannot get back, including that of a White House intern whose mother to this day says, please, President Trump, do something, right? So here we're seeing that. So we saw the articulation of why things have gotten to this point, and that's the failure of policies, the reclassification of crimes, activists, judges, feckless prosecutors alike. We know it, right? We talk about it all the time. So here we are seeing the president come in and do something, and then during this time will set things right. But it's now up, I believe, to Congress and these cities to take this next step. Because the worst thing ever would be once this president leaves and then all the sand just goes back into the hole and it restores back to normal. So we need to set this precedent and then have it remain. So all these other blue cities that people have given up on have a fighting chance too.
Well, and the president said he's not going to give up. He said, we're not going to lose control. So all those cities had better wake up because he's serious about this. Look, I don't want to put our team in our control room too much in hot water here, but do you guys have from the U.S. Attorney of D.C., Jeanine Pirro, talking about the kids, if you will? Because coming out of what Emily said, I think, all right, let's watch this.
I see too much violent crime being committed by young punks who think that they can get together in gangs and crews and beat the hell out of you or anyone else. They don't care where they are. They can be in DuPont Circle, but they know that we can't touch them. Why? Because the laws are weak. I can't touch you if you're 14, 15, 16, 17 years old and you have a gun. I convict someone of shooting another person with an illegal gun on a public bus in the chest. Intent to kill? I convict him. And you know what the judge gives him? Probation. Says you should go to college. We need to go after the D.C. Council and their absurd laws. We need to get rid of this concept.
Lisa.
Well, look, this is brilliant, especially that show of force that we just saw during this press conference, this Liberation Day for Washington, D.C. Look, the Democrat Party has become the party of crime and disorder, and the Republican Party is the party of law and order. And what President Trump is doing in Washington, D.C. will underscore this point, because just like how he was able to we saw record highs of border crossings under Joe Biden and then record lows under President Trump in short order. That's what we're going to see in Washington, D.C. And we saw under the Obama administration where he upended the criminal justice system, where somehow it was racist to arrest criminals, which ended up putting minority communities even more at risk. And then what we saw under Joe Biden with open borders as well, just this lawlessness in the Democrat Party. So he's going to underscore this point and put these mayors in these blue cities on notice, because why won't they protect their citizens when they can? It's not an issue of being able to. It's an issue that they don't want to. And then also, I'll just go through. There's been a long list of members of Congress, staffers, and the intern that was also murdered that have been attacked. You had Henry Cuellar was carjacked at gunpoint, member of Congress. Congresswoman Angie Craig attacked in her apartment complex. Senator Rand Paul had a staffer that was stabbed as well. And then, of course, those two Israeli embassy staffers that were executed recently in Washington, D.C. I also will finally just note that even in 2023, we saw a bipartisan effort with Joe Biden to override a rewrite of Washington, D.C.'s criminal code that tried to do, softening on crime. So there has already been a demonstration of a bipartisan desire to get this under control.
Yeah, and the president also, during his remarks, read the long list of victims of Washington, D.C. crime. And the person that I'm thinking about today is Nasratullah Amanyar, who worked as an Afghan interpreter, came to the United States and was murdered as a Lyft driver, working a shift as a Lyft driver in Washington, D.C., which means that he survived Taliban rule, working for the U.S. government, came to the United States for safety, and then was killed in our nation's capital. And Harris, to your point, the person who killed him was 14 years old at the time, and he received a 3-year sentence. And it was actually supposed to be 1.5 years, and the judge said that that was too light. So what President Trump and Jeanine Pirro are trying to do is increase that, because a lot of these young people are being used for their youth.
100%.
Because the older people in the gangs know that they won't get a severe sentence. So then you see these, not even teenagers sometimes, 12, 13-year-olds committing heinous crimes. I spoke to the mother of Eric Tarpinian Jackson, the congressional intern who was shot in June, and she talked about the horror of how young these victims are and how it felt to her to realize that her child, her baby, who she called a gift from God, didn't get shot one time but was riddled with bullets. So that's the reality that she's living in, and that's what President Trump is trying to stop.
Real quickly, John, we'll bring it back to you here. How hard is it to get that age lowered from 18 to where it really, where the crime reflects that it needs to be?
Look, the way it is now with this special treatment of juvenile offenders is a product of this kind of woke revolution in criminal law that I think President Trump and the federal government are trying to stop. Now, President Trump and the federal government and states and localities can try to change the laws and say we're not going to treat murderers differently because they're 17, because they're 16. Some of the courts might push back, but this, I think, would be an ideal moment to try to go back to the courts and say the crime problem is so out of control with young murderers that we need to start treating people who commit adult crimes like adults.
Yeah, I mean, my big question is, do you really see a change in their behaviors by letting them go early on these horrible crimes? Like, do they get turned around by society, or is there the same rate of recidivism among them as there is for adults?
Actually, the data from D.C. itself is that the juveniles appear to have higher rates of going back to crime than the adults do, because they know they're rational, they're not dummies. They know they're going to be treated specially and get off on earlier sentences.
Well, and they have more years to do it.